is today. That's the big moment we were all waiting for. Today we will know the name of the winner and the big tiebreak, of course. Well, I'm anticipating with a lot of excitement. Two specialists in short time controls. It's really hard to say who is the favorite. Well, in the classical games we might say that it was somewhat well, the initiative in the match was somewhat in Jan's hands, but he couldn't really squeeze anything out of it. So, as you can see, 2 draws in first 2 games, and the tiebreak will be played as in usual format, which we have already seen. So, 25 plus 10, 2 games.
In case of a tie, it will be followed up with 10 plus 10.
Right, and we've seen so far only one match which went to 10 plus 10. It was Jan Nepomniachtchi overtaking Jan Radoslav Wojtaszek, absolutely. And we haven't seen the blitz yet. So, well, in case of a tie in a match with 10 plus 10, the players will proceed to play 2 blitz games, 5 minutes plus 3 seconds.
We should expect very thrilling and entertaining battle between Alexander
I believe
and
I don't know what's gonna happen, but surely this is something not to miss. So 2 specialists, and you know, I remember I don't quite remember Nepomniachtchi winning tiebreaks apart from World Cup, but World Cups once again it's like in earlier stages, right? And for Krysiuk, perhaps the biggest tiebreak he has won was in candidates in Kazan 2011, so when he won against Kramnik. He made it to the final against Boris Gelfand in those candidates matches, and at some point he sort of intentionally started to make draws with white in order to, you know, to postpone it, to drag it further and further to a shorter time controls. So 3 minutes before the start, first game, Alexander Krysiuk will play with the white pieces. He's well, true to his habit of arriving quite late, and Jan is already here. And few remarks about the time controls. So 25 plus 10, we call it a rapid chess, but it is still enough time to play a chess game of a very good quality, right? So it's not like no rush on the players, and you have to find the proper balance between speeding up, obviously, because you don't want to end up with 1 minute in a very complicated position, but at the same time, if you misplay the opening, then you might not get a second chance and you'll be simply smashed off the board. And once again we have a VIP guest who will make the first move in this game.
I think it's one of the well known, or one of the most famous persons in Russia, a famous sportsman, currently a legend of Russian hockey and NHL either. Alexander Ovechkin, last year, the great Alex, last year, his Washington Capitals team, and apparently Alexander won a Stanley Cup.
And he was declared the MVP as well last year. I think he was few
times NHL MVP, leading goal scorer. Maybe not this season, but in some of the seasons he was the player who scored most goals in entire during the season, and probably nowadays he's just maybe one of the best hockey players
in the world. So one of the most recognizable Russian sportsmen, so to speak. Right, so he'll make first move for Alexander Krysiuk. I'm wondering if Alex plays chess. So if it will be, because one of those guests who arrived to make a first move, they were really awkward at the chessboard. So you could feel that this is something new.
It may be funny that Alexander Ovechkin may start the game against Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Yeah, so it will be Alexander who will make the first move, but it won't be Krysiuk. Right, and once again, the interesting thing is what move's gonna be played, because yes, in the classical game, Krysiuk tried d4, tried to go for a, which turns out to be a sideline in Krumfeld, but it didn't work out because he was the one to trying to equalize with white after. Yes, e4,
or
e3 or e4. he's asking, I mean, if e3 is fine or... Yeah. Okay, so e4, and will Krishuk return the pawn back?
Yes, he did.
Yes, he does.
And it means that...
most likely we will see another d4 and perhaps another Grunfeld or anti-Grunfeld. So far, as we said, the most successful opening-wise was against Jan Nepomniachtchi was Radoslav Wojtaszek, who managed to get
something from, I think, in almost in every game.
Yeah, in 2 games he had white for sure, right? I mean,
like in 2 or 3 games he was almost winning, we can say. And e4 is still...
e4 played.
Yeah. It's the decision made by Alexander Grishuk.
Interestingly, e5 played, and this causes Grishuk to think at a very early stage. So perhaps he was expecting the knight.
Yeah.
Perhaps he was expecting the knight. And to be honest, I'm not sure what Jan does after e4, e5. I'm not sure if it's like the first game he plays with e5. I believe there were some games, but... First of all, it's the question for Grishuk what he's going to play. I believe Rui Lopez is to be expected, so not the Italian, but knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b5. And yeah, and you know, a bit of an awkward situation. So you're playing the the Petrov, knight f3, knight f6. Okay, that's known to be very, very solid opening, right?
Well, recently Alexander Grishuk played the line, obviously knight takes e5, d6, knight f3, knight takes e4, and if I remember correctly, bishop d3.
Ah, bishop d3, the game he won against Fabiano Caruana. Yeah, that was an interesting, well, I'd say a tricky line. If black knows what he's doing, he is... Yeah, it's not a draw just yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe that's
so it's probably the result of the first game.
The result of both,
even not the second.
Yeah, of the both classical games.
So.
Draw, yeah, but this one, yeah. Well, perhaps, you know, technical crew, they're exercising in predictions because yes, usually if you see the Petrov on the board, well, it's a draw. That's what people usually think. Which might be not the case here. So, and once again, I've started to say about an awkward situation for Grishuk. So it's clear he wasn't expecting e5, and now it becomes clear as well that he was not expecting the Petrov. So one e5 was a surprise. Second knight f6.
So he has to recall the ideas of his home preparation. Maybe not exactly for the match against Jan Nepomniachtchi, but.
Yeah, obviously he has some lines in Petrov, right? I mean, it's not like, well, the move you consider here, apart from the obvious knight takes,
d4.
Is well d4. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's like the other line in the Petrov. But if you do not want to play the Petrov, you can still go knight c3, right?
And it will be a transposition.
Knight c6, bishop b5 or g3. I don't know. Some people do play g3. Some people play d4 and then take. Because you might try to surprise Jan at the very, like counter-surprise at the very early stage. Yeah, because obviously the main lines of Petrov you expect to be covered.
Yeah, obviously.
If Jan goes for it. Well, after the main move, knight takes e5, d6, knight f3.
There is a
knight takes e4, yeah, it's like bishop d3, the one that we've mentioned that Grishuk played is not considered to be the main. Well, knight c3 perhaps is.
Also, by the way, knight c4 is
knight c4 is, yeah, a tricky line. I've lost a game like that with black against Alexander Motilev.
Yeah, well, but I think that we should expect something more or less solid because, as we mentioned before, the time control that the players are having now, like 25 plus 10, means that there might be enough time to convert an advantage if the player receives it. So it means that probably both players will try to
not to take
any risk.
Too much risk, yeah. Not that you're taking too much risk on move 3. So
yeah, in Petrov defense.
More about you know, like.
Yes, but Grishuk takes some risk spending that much time on move 3.
Yeah, and once again, during the classical games, he was the one who was under time pressure. And then he really has to switch to new, to new circumstances.
So probably he was preparing for shorter times control even during the classical part of the match.
Yeah, but what I wanted to say, first of all, of course, you are not getting 1 hour 30, you are getting 25 minutes. That's one part. You have to adapt. But the trickier part comes when you start playing on increment, because increment of 30 seconds still leaves you with more or less enough time to think, right?
D3.
While 10 seconds increment, it's practically, you just have to make moves and that's it. D3, which, says I don't want any opening advantage. I'm playing for I just want to play the game. I'm playing for general chess understanding.
So probably it means that Grishuk didn't have any idea because it's a very.
He doesn't want to. Perhaps he doesn't want to fight in the opening analysis. He wants to fight over the board.
Or maybe he wants to postpone his idea to
even shorter time
stage,
control. But look, on move 3, Grishuk spends 4 minutes. Not very practical decision. That much I can say. And G3, because that's once again interesting, because I was about to say that White is trying to play the Philidor defense with the colors reversed, right? And after G3, you can still do this by taking, a Pirts, or what else can it? Yeah, you probably take now. With G3 played, you probably take, yes. Knight takes D5, Bishop G2, and perhaps the fact that you have an extra tempo in the Philidor should be enough not to get into some worse position. So we will have an actual game.
But as well, this line has been played recently by Vladislav Artemiev against Maxim Chigayev in Russian Team Chess Championship in Higher League, and if I remember correctly, the game continued with Bishop C5, Castle, and Knight C3 was the move played by Vladislav Artemiev, which leads to more or less well-known positions, which are a bit tricky, but Black should be obviously solid because of the pawn structure. They don't have any weaknesses, so they can take, and just simply play Bishop B6 at any moment. I mean, just blocking some ideas connected with playing Rook B1 and pressing on B7. So
this actually sort of transposed into 4 knights G3, right?
Yeah.
This one is kind of a direct transposition. So E takes D5, and I'm wondering what Jan is thinking about. Is there any merit in taking with the queen?
Okay, well, it may be, but
not very likely, right? It looks like Knight D5 is more or less automatic move.
Yeah, because like Queen D5 means that after Knight C3, Black is almost forced to play Bishop B4. Otherwise, there is no sense in playing Queen takes D5 because it may be just a waste of the tempo.
Yeah, Bishop B4, okay, and then after Bishop G2, I mean, I don't know those things like E4. Yeah, that would be critical. Once again, if you just play a move, White castles, then White is getting.
Yeah, so they
looks
have
like
a pair of bishops and
very solid position, right? So perhaps the critical move would be to go E4, first capturing on C3 or going E4 straight away.
Yeah, well, so if I play Knight G5,
Knight G5, yeah, Bishop takes C3, Pawn takes C3, for instance.
Becomes messy.
Yeah, and then the whole question is about if I'm able to hold the pawn on E4, right? So Bishop F5, for instance. Yeah, the feeling is like White should be able to take the pawn.
Yeah, it looks so.
Bishop F5, and then White perhaps castles short, right? Because taking on E4,
I think knight E4
Knight E4. Yeah, but I wasn't sure about this. Black takes with the knight
or with the bishop.
Could be with the bishop as well. Yeah, but what I thought that Black kind of takes with the knight, pawn takes on D1, king D1, castles long, and then, for instance, king E2, rook H to E8, F3. Well, White does have an extra pawn, but possibly, bishop moves some F5s, Yes, but that's really a question if black is in time.
This position requires some precise play from black. I mean, probably it's not what Jan really wants to receive.
Yeah, so that's really strange seeing him thinking in this particular position, because I would really expect
I think he'll take knight d5, but I can't say that it's pointless. No, he takes
queen takes. That's even more surprising, because now we have the game is dragged to unexplored territory where I suspect that both players have little knowledge about the opening theory.
Yeah, but obviously queen g5 is not the most popular choice, I think. And it leads to some very unusual... Okay, well, I can say configuration, but... So in this position it would be better if black's pawn would be on c5, creating an outpost.
Sort of stopping.
Yeah.
Stopping possible d4s.
Yeah, well, knight c3 looks more or less...
Looks natural, yeah.
Well, we can start with bishop g2, because if you play e4, I think that I can simply transpose.
Yeah, you can transpose to the previous line. Bishop b4, knight g5, and so on. Yeah, but that's tricky. And once again,
maybe he wants to create something forced after bishop g4 all of a sudden.
Bishop g4.
Or playing first bishop takes c3 and then bishop g4, but it doesn't look so natural.
Yeah, that actually is very tricky, because if you take on g4, I'm wondering if white can take knight takes e4, which might lead to some really messy position.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to find some simplifications, like if I take on e4,
knight takes, yeah,
bishop takes.
Yeah, queen g4 is another move. Yeah, and perhaps a good one, queen g4,
yeah, just
because
probably just winning.
Queen takes g4, the knight on e4 is pinned.
Yeah, so and if we play f5, I just take with a pawn.
Yeah. So bishop g4, knight e4, you will have to take on d1, it seems, and this is not good, right?
I think it's just bad.
Knight f6, bishop d5.
Yeah, that's the point.
Alright, what's happening now after only 5 moves? So queen takes d5 was move number 5 for Jan Nepomniachtchi. Krzysztof used
almost third of his time. Yeah,
almost third of his time, and Jan is not in his preparation either, because we had seen in classical games when he's well prepared, he's playing instantly. He even managed to accumulate some time in one of the games, and it was on 1 hour 35 instead of starting 1 hour 30.
But it is nice to see that players starting to create from the very beginning of the game.
Yeah, so bishop g2 and bishop g4 was played.
Well,
so white can go h3.
Yeah, I think this move is,
if he wants it,
should be useful, because we're trying to, forcing black to decide what will be the fate of the bishop.
Well, an interesting thing is that I'm not quite sure how it's played, but I believe in one of the games, I remember with similar structure, black would actually take on f3. Takes, yeah, as counterintuitive as it looks, and go queen d6, go castle long, something like that. For instance, castle short, castle long. Yeah, I do understand the bishop is very appealing, the light square bishop, but black is planning to put the knight on d4 and possibly start some moving an h pawn. So
yeah, well, but
I still believe white
I think
feels more pleasant to play with white in such positions. But once again, I don't know what Jan's intentions are, or maybe just to go bishop h5 after h3.
Well, if I continue persecuting the bishop, playing g4,
bishop g6.
Okay, well,
you can get it with knight h4, but this is like a favorable version of a previous position.
Yeah, maybe I can improve.
Knight c3, yeah, and then I'm wondering it's not bishop b4, but just queen d7. some position like that. Well, once again, white seemingly wins few tempi, but you know, the fact that white has played h3, g4 maybe will lead to creating some weaknesses later on. h3 played, bishop takes f3 without much of a hesitation.
Without any doubt.
Yeah, that's interesting. You had seen that Krzysztof played h3 and left the board, and Jan, well, replied instantly. Even though the resulting position, it appealed to us to be better for white. Yeah, bishop takes. I'm not sure where the queen is going, to be honest. d6 or d7, something.
Maybe I don't know, but if you play queen d7, you're trying to force white to do something like on the king side, because h3 pawn is
white can't
somewhere.
Really castle for the time being. White can't really castle.
Yeah, so I can start with knight c3.
Knight c3, and I suspect black castles long in this case.
And then play bishop g5, I think.
Bishop g5, yeah.
With some ideas to take on f6, more or less.
Knight to d4, bishop g2, I guess, right? And I don't know.
Or maybe it's just nothing.
Not sure if I need c6.
To convert, yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised. That's the game I'm talking about. I was surprised where in very similar position black actually has taken on f3 and then proved that as dangerous as it looks, this light square bishop is not all that threatening.
A very unusual idea.
Any point in capturing with the queen? h3, bishop takes.
So it's like forcing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm forcing.
Yeah, maybe I can still like.
Maybe
go
black
queen,
can still
queen
play
d7.
queen d7, and actually he does threaten knight d4 in some cases. Yeah, but at least after queen f3, queen d7, white can castle immediately. White can castle immediately and then see what happens next. Yes, and Krzysztof does take with the queen.
And so if you take on f3 and try to gain some tempos, for example,
like knight d4, bishop d1, I assume.
Yeah, I think so.
And then he'll try to prove once again that pair of bishops advantage. You know, here it's actually not that evident that white is much better.
Yeah, I think you can
or better at all.
Normally developing bishop c5,
yeah.
c6 at least. I mean,
white will have to play c3 at some point, right? Because you cannot tolerate this knight on d4 forever, and exchanging.
Okay, well you can try to exchange it, play knight d2, knight b3.
Knight d2, knight b3, but yeah, once again, then the bishop's gonna take on d4, and once again, you.
So players are trying to play very, very solid chess. I mean.
Yes, capture on f3 and knight d4 was played. Krzysztof pretty fast plays bishop d1 and castle long without much of a hesitation. Yeah, perhaps point being that he leaves the c5 square available for the knight. So in case of c3, for instance, knight might want to go to e6 and later on c5. And you kind of have to play c3 this very move, or like in next couple of moves. You have to get rid of this knight, because
okay, first maybe I can start with knight d2.
Knight d2 and put it on f3. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, knight d2 is exactly what Krzysztof does. So it's just a game, right? It has nothing to do with some opening analysis or anything.
But isn't it easier to play this position with white, because white has a pair of bishops and black is the side who has to prove their, decision to give up the light squared bishop. I think Jan will try to make it tactical.
Yeah, he obviously should try to. Well, to prevent, first of all, to prevent white from comfortable development, right? Not that I can see an easy way how to do it.
Yeah, well, like bishop c5.
Yeah, my question would be if you want to have your pawn on f5 or not. Do you want to, for instance, to play knight d5 in this position and then... Interestingly, he chose to go knight c6. So he goes back, prevents c3, because the d3 pawn is hanging. Does it mean that white will have difficulties playing c3? The move that originally we thought is not entirely in white's favor, but how do you untie the pieces? You move the bishop and the knight jumps back to d4.
Yeah, but if you gave me a chance to play c3, for example, playing bishop c5,
bishop c5,
I think I would play.
Yeah, c3.
And after knight e6, or I don't know.
Whatever, the knight goes somewhere.
Maybe the idea was to play king e2 first.
King e2, and then the bishop possibly goes to b3.
Yeah, to b3 or to c2, and then b4, a4.
Yeah, I can see white having a decent position here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if like better, but yeah, decent position.
Yes,
here.
but personally, I can't say that Jan's decision to give up a bishop and go to an endgame was, I mean, practically good, because Grishuk playing third move d3.
He wants something like that.
He has shown that
he is not ready to.
He's not pretending anymore for opening advantage, but
yeah, it's like he's not ready for discussion in one of those fashionable lines. He simply wants some position like that he can play and show his understanding.
But now it looks like Grishuk, even playing third move d3 and like hiding from the theory, still managed to receive very comfortable position. Okay, well, obviously there is no risk for white, but there is still some risk for black in the long run.
Yeah, but how do you continue? I mean,
I was thinking about knight e4 personally.
Knight e4.
The idea is to, I mean, trade the knight and play c3, and this knight on c6 may be a bit restricted.
Yeah, and if, let's say, if the knight goes to d5, you can still play c3, right?
Yeah, but
a3 played by Grishuk. a3, so he stops knight b4, perhaps, because that was one of the other possibilities I was thinking about. That he will cover. You need to cover both d4 and b4 squares in order to move the bishop from d1. So possibly he wants to play a3, put the knight on b3, and then proceed with bishop f3, if black allows this, of course.
And it seems to me that endgames is not the strongest side of Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Yeah, we know him as the brilliant tactician. It doesn't necessarily mean that he is not good as an endgame player, but if we talk of his kind of trademark of his style and like characteristical play, you would actually think of tactical complications. So once again, yes, Grishuk is more experienced, and perhaps, well, that was an interesting decision to try to lure Jan in some positional play. And he sped up at some point, Grishuk, right? I mean, okay, not so much. He has still taken his time and spent a couple of minutes on a3.
The plan became more or less clear for him, and he can just blitz out a few moves.
Right, and for black it's not so clear what to do, right? Because, I mean, first intention is to develop the f8 bishop, but it's not yet clear where to put it, because
I think we need the pawn on f5. Yeah, g6 is...
g6. To put the bishop on g7, go knight d5 and f7, f5. Something like that.
And also probably bishop h6 is a positional.
Yeah, it could be that you want to play bishop h6, or when the knight moves, you exchange the bishops. Knight goes to e4. Okay.
Aimed against
now
bishop h6.
Can't play bishop g7 comfortably because of bishop g5.
Yeah.
Bishop g7, bishop g5, and this being will cost black an exchange.
Well,
so your options are
to take on e4 and play
h5.
Your
options are to take on e4, play h5, with intention to go bishop h6 on the very next move, and I don't really see how you're supposed to prevent it. Yeah, exactly. That's what Jan Nepomniachtchi has done. White, however, has an option of playing c3, bishop h6, bishop b3, and try to prove an advantage of one bishop against the knight, which is, well, not so much, I can tell you. Not so much, if anything.
Additionally, there is an idea to play bishop g5. I mean, at some point I'm forcing you to play rook d6, because if you play bishop e7,
now bishop e3, and black doesn't have doesn't have an option of exchanging the bishops. However, in this case, h4 you
H4.
have to reckon with.
Obviously.
I mean, it's not necessarily like leads to some really good position, but I'm not sure what White's reaction should be.
The problem that if you play g4, there is knight d4
knight
connected
d4
with
going to e6,
knight e6 and bishop g5,
and
which
yeah,
will lead
then
to probably
getting
better endgame for black.
getting to those squares.
Well, maybe Grishuk can simply play something like c3.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like if he goes c3 after bishop h6.
Yeah, well, we'll
he might
receive
want to
some
take,
extra tempos because
might
of this
want
rook.
to take, go to b3.
Yeah.
Be like bishop b3 attacking f7
king
or king e2
first.
to start with. But once again, h4 in this case.
Well, I may not react at all. I think I can play bishop
b3. Ah, so those positions, yes. If black captures, white takes back with f pawn and then puts the pawn on h4. Yes, it's getting fairly simplified if the pair of bishops will be traded off the board, but still, yeah, still of course the game is tense.
Could Grishuk avoid this trade of knights and h5 bishop h6 idea? For example, after g6, not playing knight e4.
I like to go, yeah, but you need to do something, yeah. And oh, knight b3 is kind of another move I was thinking of, but.
So it seems to me that a3 was a bit, I can't say useless, but he could have started with knight e4 immediately.
Yeah, perhaps there was some problem. I mean, it looks like he was not happy with an immediate knight e4 for whatever reason.
Probably I might get it, because if you play rook d4,
f3.
Ah, well, f3.
f3 followed by c3. Yeah, that's what I thought originally.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's not
maybe
clear
it's
why. Yeah, it's not clear why it doesn't work. Okay, so
c3.
Alexander plays c3, bishop to h6. Indeed, Jan wants to exchange the dark square bishops. Bishop takes, rook takes, will be played very quickly. Bishop goes to b3, attacking f7 pawn.
I think the black main's idea is to transfer a knight to d6 square. Well, it's not so easy to do it immediately, but... Like, well, we can start with rook h7,
rook
which
h7
seems a bit awkward, but I mean, it's difficult to...
And then...
To prove that...
King e2 or...
White is better.
Yeah, the question is like, do I want to spend the whole tempo on going h3, h4? Because positionally it fixes the pawn on the light square, and then, you know, f7 is hanging, so one day you will have to play f6. Well, by the way, speaking of playing f6, one day Jan says, I might as well just do it now. Why to bother putting the rook on h7? So f6, and now my feeling says that you have to go. You have to go h4, king e2, trade one rook, and then, I don't know, prepare for f4, for instance. So
or like king e3, g4,
yeah, white might still try to play a little bit.
I think after playing the h4, sorry, we have an idea to trade all of the rooks, because
bishop f7 will be annoying.
We can scratch g6 and h5 pawns playing king e2, king e3, g4, which is one of the very typical ideas in this.
Yeah, and knight on c6 is restricted with the c3 pawn, so the situation is not yet ideal for black.
h4 is played.
h4. Maybe you use this moment to bring the king to e7.
Yeah, why not?
Like king d7, check from d1, king e7. Then if white takes on d8, you might want to take with the knight as well. As I said, knight on c6 is not doing much anyway.
By the way, was it better to make intermediate bishop e6 check and then
bishop
h4?
e6 check to force the king back to...
Like
could have been an idea. It's like it's hard to understand who's winning and who is losing time, because black has a tempo with rook d6, but the king is stuck on h8. And as well, after rook d6, you might say, okay, I'm putting my bishop on h3.
Yeah,
putting my bishop on h3, so that for the time being the king is not coming to a center. Yeah, king d7 was played by Jan, so he's bringing the king closer to a center, which never was a bad idea in the endgame. And somehow the feeling is about those symmetrical endgames, which you can have, by the way, from lot and lot of various openings, that usually the classier, the better player manages to outplay his less experienced opponent, which is not exactly the case in our tournament, because both of them, they're like just evenly matched. Both of them are very, very strong, and still, draw seems to be the most probable result, of course. Rook back to h8. Now the question is if Krzysztof's gonna... well, for instance, takes on d8, and if black takes with the rook, you can, well, go rook g1.
Yeah.
And g4 becomes, well, a bit of an annoying threat.
I think rook d8, knight d8 is most likely to be played, because so knight on c6 is a bit misplaced, is restricted, but then...
So you probably want to go to put it on e6
or f7,
f7 d6 is another route for this knight. So which might bring Krzysztof to the idea of not trading on d8 voluntarily, to wait for black to capture on d8. Bishop d5 could be a move trying to double the pawns, but the thing is, first of all, almost sure that bishop c6, bc6 is not that big of a deal, and black has rook d6 as well, if he wants it. Rook d6, and same thing, knight to d8, and then c6 perhaps. So shouldn't be a
so
problem.
Krzysztof has to come up with something.
Yeah, like if he really wants to prove that white has a little something
extraordinary.
Yeah, which is not easy in such position. Yeah. So far, nobody wants to take risks, and well, particularly Krzysztof in this game. So he was trying to outsmart Nippon Machine, like position with two bishops but somewhat less space. It is unlikely that he'll succeed, and if he will continue spending a lot of time, knight becomes like exponentially more dangerous the less time you have. Your opponent's knight, which in especially the positions which are somewhat blocked, and then it's not a big of a not such a big of a deal that bishop can switch from one wing to the other, but the fact that knight can actually control all 64 squares on the board while bishop only has access to 32, this might play a key role. So bishop d5 might as well be, just shutting the game down. Rook d6, capture on c6, and we go home. Okay, we prepare for game number 2.
We just have a small break. But rook d6, well, I think that it's not necessary to allow white to take on c6, because, I mean, it's a slight benefit, but it's still a benefit, because then will white have a better pawn structure, then they'll have some plans connected with king d3, king c4, moving the king to c5 square.
Yeah, agreed. For instance, if we skip the move for black, like rook h8 to f8, right?
Yeah, rook d6 played and b4.
Rook d6, b4, okay.
Knight d8,
knight goes back to d8, which seemingly does allow white to go c4 in this position.
Yes, so no more knight d4.
c4 and c6
and c5
kind of traps the knight, but not really, because c5, rook d7, bishop c4, and here I'm actually ready to claim that white is getting something, because the rook gets to d6.
Yes, but I think it still remains. I mean, well, I can play knight e6.
Yeah, knight e6.
The problem that after rook takes d7, king takes d7, you almost have to take on e6 because knight d4 is coming.
Yeah, but I should have taken on e6 first then.
Ah, well.
In this position, I should have taken on e6 first. King takes, exchange on d7, go check. You go to e7, and it really depends on the evaluation. Let's say rook d6, rook d8, which looks like a draw to me.
Yeah.
Simply looks like a draw. Yeah.
But Krzysztof decided to play f4.
f4. Instead of c4, he goes for f4, which is reasonable. Reasonable, putting some pressure at least on black's center. And then, well, c6 played. Bishop back to b3. Then after knight e6, he might not want to trade the bishop immediately. He can take on d6, bring the other rook to d1 and go king e3. So this is still
a game.
Still a game, yeah. Rook d8 though, yeah. Well, Jan takes on d1 himself and then goes knight e6. So after c6, bishop b3 takes on d1 himself, goes knight e6, which probably leads to the same position. King e3,
and position.
The critical move, of course, is rook d8 to try to influence the...
Yeah, but I think rook d8 is not as good as it may be on the first glance, because I can take, you have to take with knight otherwise, and then I'll play f5.
And then f5, and it's actually...
And h5 pawn becomes...
Actually is very...
The
tricky.
target.
Yeah, it actually becomes very tricky because if g takes f5, e takes f5, bishop d1 is a threat that black will have to find a way to deal with. You know, bishop d1 and then bishop takes h5. So a5, disturbing white on the queen side.
Yeah, creating a counterplay on the queen side.
Makes a lot of sense. Let's agree on this. Yes, because if the second open file appears in the position, right, then while we'll have to pay some attention to what is going on the queen side. If black is allowed to capture on b4 to go rook a8, then white might find it hard to actually prove any advantage and simply will go for simplifications.
Well, it's not so clear how to prove white's strategy in the opening and after going to an endgame.
Wait, taking the pawn in this moment, like I probably should take on e6 first.
Yes, but I saw that
king
like
takes and then take on a5.
Just in time.
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
This rook takes rook a3.
Like we're almost obliged to play
nothing.
King
d3 is practically forced, yeah, and then rook g7 is sort of a threat, right? But not really. You go rook a1, rook g7, rook g1, and then if white takes on g6, you take on f4.
Yeah.
And it's actually black who is better, or possibly winning.
Yeah, so a5.
Just a nice little move, and apparently there is nothing for white.
Maybe he can still play e4, f5, but it's connected with some risk because I mean, like
that's probably what he has to do.
We are capturing the g8 square. It means that no rook g8 in the nearest perspective, and it's not so easy to decide where the knight goes. Yeah, knight c7 and then knight b5 idea.
Yeah, has some potential to go to b5, attacking both pawns, and still it doesn't interfere on the 8th rank. So black still can go.
Yeah, by the way, I like this position for black more than for white. I think it's white has to be patient. Because knight b5 is coming.
Knight b5 is sort of a threat.
c4 is not this kind of move that you really want to make, but even though.
Yeah, I mean, if you play c4, then bishop takes e6. So first of all, he wants to be safe, because rook endgame you can navigate with 10 seconds per move.
Yeah.
There is
maybe
much
some
of a deal.
Weird move like rook b1.
But then if black captures.
Or even b5 probably.
b5 immediately. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking of white going b5. White going b5.
No, he just takes.
Yeah, he takes, and then we thought it's just a draw, right? Rook takes b7, rook takes a3, king d3. We do get the position we were talking about.
Rook a1 or
rook
a2.
a1.
Or maybe there is still some tricks, because if you play rook a1, I have to go rook c7 first.
Rook c7. Yeah, but how do you guard the g pawn?
No, but the idea that I
go
have.
Rook g1.
Ah, you mean so?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready to give the c6
well,
deal.
So I take
king e7. And
then I take on e5.
Check.
And then I play king
and
c4.
then you go king king d4.
Or king
actually,
d4, yeah.
It's not clear. Why didn't you go king d4? Yeah, so I should have gone to f7 then, after this check on c6. Should have gone, yeah, it does seem to be somewhat passive, but it guards the g6 pawn.
Yeah, well, if I just
and
do
then
simply
you should
the same,
try, takes, go to c4, rook g3,
and it may be very,
go
very
to
unpleasant.
d5.
Or
Yeah,
probably winning.
It's hard to say. Let's because that's a rook endgame still, but
obviously
white
does better.
does have chances because of his king being very active.
And I think it could have been missed by Jan Nepomniachtchi, because rook c7 intermediate is not that. I mean.
Okay, first of all, he didn't play rook a1 just yet, so maybe there are other resources.
By the way, some f5.
Yeah, could be.
Trying to simplify.
Could be that he has
everything at once.
Wait a sec. If he captures on f4,
yeah,
and then goes f5, which does give white kind of dangerous passed pawn after e5. But I was hoping to.
But
rook a4 there is even rook b4.
You mean rook b4?
b4, rook d4. This is a risky path. Rook b4. Yeah, I mean, why would black create such a dangerous pawn?
Yeah,
and then rook d4 to d6. Yeah, that's something.
So f5 first.
f5 at once. Yeah.
Yeah.
f5 at once perhaps makes more sense. Where black is threatening to take on e4 himself.
Yeah, I think that we have to take with e pawn. I mean, if we are supposed to take with any pawn.
So ef5, yeah. But then king f5, and it's like,
yeah, it should be okay.
Like practically no material left.
Maybe it's rook f7, for example.
King
e6.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm trying to.
Yeah, you'll attack one of the pawns. Black takes on f4. This should be kind of impossible to lose. Check, king f5 or whatever.
King f7. Yeah, king f5, rook g5, king f7. And this should be a draw.
Takes on g3, right?
Yeah.
Two pawns each equal material. Yeah, that's rook a4. Hoping that you will move the pawn forward.
So it's most likely to be played, I think.
Yeah, f5 seems to be good enough. The move which will practically force a draw. I believe it's not the only move here, but perhaps the more straightforward one. And once again, I believe that we are reaching the point we can try to summarize this game already, right? I mean, I don't see it finishing with any other result than a draw, unless some big blunders will be made. Doesn't look like Krishuk succeeded, right? So he seemingly got what he wanted to get. So out of the main theoretical lines, got playable position, but
it wasn't enough to create something sufficient.
Jan equalized with relatively easy. And once again, we just said that it was on Grishuk's territory, so a maneuvering game, no queens on the board, not a lot of tactic, and still seemingly Jan manages to equalize. Once again, what could be the problem with f5? Because Jan is still thinking. Like,
yeah, white is supposed to take with.
Yeah, because f takes e4 followed by rook c3 is a threat, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and if you take there, so you can still take on e4.
Takes. Jan decides to take on f4, okay, and rook a1. Not that I'm fully happy about this decision.
Yeah, well, so rook a1.
How about rook g7?
Yeah, I think you have to play rook g7.
And then he goes rook h1 and takes on h4.
Yeah, well, so he's just in time.
He's just in time, yeah.
And if not rook g7, well, I can still play rook c7, but
you can start with rook c7.
But the difference that you can just simply
check here.
Yeah, so that's what Grishuk has played.
Rook to c7, okay.
So and probably just leads to some.
Yeah, I mean, white is never really in danger, right?
Yeah.
So he can always give those checks, and it's not advisable to go to the 8th rank. I mean,
Yeah, but
it's not the winning
the
play.
problem that you even couldn't create the plus pawn on e-file, because if you play king d4, just rook h4, and you can't play e5 because of the check.
f4 is hanging.
Yeah.
So the king is getting cut on the 4th rank.
Yeah, so I have a
check,
slight prediction that after rook c7, rook h1, rook takes c6, the game will shut down after king f7, rook c7, rook e6, king e6, yeah.
Simply a repetition. Wait, could it be that the c pawn is fast enough after rook c6, king to f7? Yeah, with rook on c6. Well, Jan played king d6, which is a bit... no, it's not surprising. King d6, rook g7.
Yes, but rook. But why not rook g7 at once?
Yeah, rook g7. That's what I'm. Now there is no f5 however, and black can play rook g1.
But still, if I play f5,
G5?
so you can play g5.
Yeah. Who knows what's that?
Yes, and you just take with the rook.
Yeah, the plan was to take with the rook.
Like
rook
still,
back to c7, king to d6.
I was curious about this line.
And then check on e7. Yeah, well, this actually isn't that clear. I mean, and by saying isn't that clear, that means it looks dangerous for black, right? Okay, we shall see. Jan goes. So Grishuk went back to c7. Jan is persistent in playing king d6, and now by he I mean Grishuk has the second chance to go rook g7, at least.
Rook c7.
Yeah, rook c7, king d6 is on the board. So one more time, rook to g7. Can black do something else?
Is there any point in intermediate rook d1 check?
I don't know. King. Yes. You can get rook h1 and
king e7.
Maybe that's enough. e7.
Okay, well, it may lead to an extra pawn still. Like you have to take. I take play rook h4.
Yeah, but
it's very unclear. It just
should be a draw, I believe. Somehow.
Yeah, because the king is
rook g4.
Restricted.
The king is cut on the 4th rank. Yeah. Rook g4. You put the pawn on h4, and then you just shuffle. Rook f7. It feels like we won't see the continuation of this game. Yes, so rook f7, rook c7 were the moves which Alexander decided to repeat the position. So draw in game 3. So far nothing was possible to squeeze out of white pieces for Alexander Grishuk, and return game in which Nepomniachtchi will have the white pieces is coming up. I believe 10 minutes break between those two games, and it means, well, a short break for us. Will come back on air in a couple of minutes before the actual game's gonna start. Stay tuned, we'll be back shortly. Хорошо. Welcome back, everyone. Second game of the tiebreak of a decisive day of Moscow Grand Prix is about to start. I believe a couple of minutes left before the official timer will announce the start of the second game. So not a lot was happening in game one. At some point we thought that Krishuk was slightly better, but no big things, really. Relatively easy draw for Jan Nepomniachtchi. Let's see how successful he's gonna be with the white pieces. Once again, we can expect one e4, and we can expect the Berlin defense from Alexander Krishuk, the same line as he relatively comfortably equalized yesterday. I believe both players are in the playing hall. Don't know if we can check that. Yeah, yep. Now, Jan is seated. Alexander is once again, just arrived to the board. So, or will we see perhaps a change from Jan, because he is capable of playing, I'd say, c4 over d4, right? I mean, if it's not one e4, so it's more likely that it's gonna be some English opening, or like one knight f3. d4 is a rare guess, but still possible. Or maybe there is no reason to change. Maybe he can still.
Yeah, Nepomniachtchi seems to be a very principled player. He tries to play the main lines, and I think we should expect first e4 and probably Ruy Lopez or even Sveshnikov. Why not?
I don't think that Alexander will change his choice, because e5 really worked for him well in the game, in the classical game yesterday. So I don't think there is any reason to to go for a full-blooded battle in the game where you, well, technically we can say you need a draw, right? I mean, so that you postpone it to the other match and you have white color again. You can try, because there won't be any game if you lose this one.
Or maybe we should expect this kind of try in the shorter time control.
Yeah, e4, e5. Okay, no surprises just yet. Knight f3, knight c6, d4 is another option for Jan Nepomniachtchi, and he pauses right here. Bishop c4 is another way to not to allow the Berlin.
Knight f6.
And two knights defense. And is there a chance Jan will go for knight g5?
Why not?
Because nobody seemed to be interested in playing knight g5 nowadays. They all play d3.
Yeah, but the knight g5 leads to very unbalanced positions.
Yeah, and Jan kind of says, yes, I'm not ready to battle in this
Maybe
one.
later. Maybe later.
Maybe later. Maybe with 5+3. Okay, so d3, bishop c5, and we have this gioco piano variation of Italian. I believe both players have played it in this tournament, right? Not against each other though. Krishuk
against Nakamura.
Krishuk played it against Nakamura, and Jan. No, well, actually, maybe Jan didn't play it. I know that he can play it, and I remember like various games. He has won quite a number of games in this line. He has lost in Baku Olympiad against Wesley So with white pieces. That was quite a painful loss. So c3, and Krishuk doesn't seem to be keen on playing d5 quickly. So his usual reaction to gioco piano is to go d6, and after a4 to play a6.
And a4. Probably Vishwanathan Anand's idea.
Yeah, so now of recent they play a5 against the a4, right? I mean that's the usual reaction.
And then one of the ideas is to transfer the knight to e3, play knight a3.
Knight a3, castles, knight c2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is like, this position is really full of
full of life.
Yeah, that's one thing, but of little small details that you really have to know. Like, when do you play h3 and when you do not need it, right? Do you allow bishop g5 with black or not? Because after an immediate castle, say white goes knight a3 or just castle short, and then if you castle short as well, then you have to reckon with bishop g5, h6, bishop h4.
Yeah.
And then sometimes g5 would allow a dangerous sacrifice on g5, and sometimes this sacrifice is just nothing. Yeah, so you have to be aware of all those. And yeah, and Krishuk still didn't make his mind. So he's still thinking in this position before a5, and he might play a6, I feel like, because a6 is still like perfectly legal move. There is nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, obviously.
Something similar that he had against Nakamura.
Yeah, an a6.
A6. Yeah, something very similar he had against Nakamura, so that Naka at some point went a5, to which Krishuk replied with b5.
h3 first.
h3 first, yes, stopping possible bishop g4s or knight g4s in some cases. So the question now is
bishop e6 legal?
Yeah, that's always a question. I mean, honestly, I've never understood this position. I mean, in some cases, it's absolutely fine to go bishop e6 and to allow white to take with the pawn.
Yeah.
To double your pawns. In other positions, which to my taste look absolutely similar, they say no, bishop e6 is a terrible positional mistake, and you're worse after it. So it's really not that easy to understand which is which case. Bishop a7, however, is very typical, a useful move, so they just move the bishop preventively so it doesn't go under a tempo after d4 or b4.
Yeah,
a useful move that you will play anyway. Yeah.
And I started to think about, yes, h6 was an idea to play g5, which nowadays became very popular in this Giocopiano structures.
That's kind of a tricky plan, yeah. Rook e1,
rook e1 and castle.
Castle short. Okay, no g5s. Knight to d2, and then we might see all this usual maneuvering like knight to e7, knight to f1, knight to g6, knight to g3. So both knights
c6 and
both sides improve their knight's position. And this was seen as well, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a deep theory which didn't start it yet.
Yeah, the feeling is like both players have to know what they're doing.
Yeah, so knight e7 is most likely to be played, or Krishuk will continue with something.
Rook to
rook
e8
e8
first. Yeah, okay. Does it mean that knight f1 will be answered with d5? Because this is what for you play rook e8.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reason you play rook e8 usually.
Also, I saw that rook e8 is useful in any direction. Also, we can play bishop e6 and then take with
the rook. That was also happening in some games. Yes. So it's up to Jan, and no d4 so far. Yeah. Well, one of the key motives in this position: who first gets to advance in the center? Who's gonna be first to advance in the center? If white plays d4 and nothing is hanging after this, so black cannot kind of capture to his advantage, let's say. So then white is usually having some initiative. Yeah. Here in this position, though, it's simply not possible. Black's gonna take twice on d4.
Yeah, white will just continue maneuvering,
I believe
playing
knight f1. So I'm a little bit puzzled why Jan is thinking in this particular moment, because knight f1 seems to be...
Okay, well, maybe b4.
Yeah, b4 is an idea sometimes. Yeah,
and b4 it seems that it should be faced with d5.
Ah, so you probably go d5.
Met with d5.
d5. And there might be some...
Well, like you can take knight e5 and play knight e4 probably.
Knight goes to e4, yeah. And that's the reason for white not to play knight f1, yeah? I mean, if you anticipate d5 after b4, then you might want to put the knight in the center.
Yeah, creating a funny threat of bishop takes h6.
Oh, bishop h6 followed by bishop d5, yeah.
But now I'm trying to show where exactly this idea may occur, but
it's really hard to blunder.
Yeah.
I mean,
because like bishop e6 looks very natural, and after bishop e6,
it
prevents.
the knight,
it prevents against, because we can take with the bishop.
So
yeah, but b4 is played.
Was played, and Grishuk has played. He didn't play d5. He quickly played bishop to e6. And is it? I believe these positions were played.
Yeah, this is
bishop takes, rook
very
takes,
familiar for
Crummy command,
yeah.
something. Queen to c2. I guess that was played.
Well, I think it's one of the most encountered pawn structures in the database.
In this Jacobian,
yeah.
Yes, a bishop e6, and yeah, but it's once again, it's not clear why, but the feeling is that white is somewhat better. I don't know, but perhaps because of this knight on c6 not being very comfortable. That in the many games I remember that white managed to get some advantage, and once again, if you think white happens, it's not easy to explain. Yeah, takes, and queen c2, queen d7. So perhaps they've switched to a known territory because Grishuk started to play faster than he was doing in the opening.
And now what about b5, by the way? I mean, I understand that black can simply take on b5 and play bishop f2, which will lead to a very complicated position with
bishop f2, king f2, rook takes on a1, white captures on c6, and
but
then
probably
you
it's just
take with the queen.
Not enough for white to equalize.
Yeah, maybe white is not very happy
yeah.
going there. Yes, two minor pieces against rook and 2 pawns, but black doesn't really have any weaknesses.
They're very
right?
solid and
doesn't have any weaknesses.
2 pawns make sense.
And then a file is open, so queen a6, rook a2 already is threatening.
Yes.
Knight goes to c4.
And probably Grishuk is considering d6, d5. I think even there.
And a capture with the queen, right?
Yeah, and a capture with the queen.
Because you have to keep the...
Creating some threats of playing e4, by the way.
Yeah, you have to keep the pawn protected. Can white...
Because it seems to me that e takes d5 is necessarily to
after
replace.
d5, yeah, that's what I thought. Can white do something else? Not clear, right? Because the knight is attacked. If you go to e3, then d4 becomes an issue.
Yeah.
That's puzzling, yeah? So knight c4 was played relatively quickly, so that means Jan is ready for such development.
Or probably he just knows this exact position and
so
knows
takes,
what to do.
Queen takes. What could be the next move? Because e4.
So first we should estimate if e4 is even a threat.
It probably is.
It probably
is, because then black threatens to take the knight, the pawn on d3, and the knight on c4 is hanged. So what you could do, you could play knight e3 here. But then black...
I think I can simply take and play rook d8.
Ah, even like that. Bishop takes, rook d8, yeah? Yeah, doesn't
okay,
seem
well,
to be...
it shouldn't be bad. Maybe I can play even b5 next.
Yeah, doesn't seem to be much, if anything, for white.
Or b6, which is more solid.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the question is, d5 or another move which prepares d5 or improves black's position in some way. But it's not clear what to do. I mean, if you're not
just
playing
an only plan, because it's not so easy to play f7, f5. I mean, even playing knight h7, because okay, well, then your next move should be like rook f8, and then probably white will allow black to play f5. But even there,
you can
b4, b5
yeah,
is a threat.
At some point, yeah. b5 is annoying at some.
Well, by the way, maybe b5.
Black can play
b5. Maybe b5 by
Grishuk
himself.
Play b5.
It's also an option.
So that if white takes on b5, you take with the pawn, yeah? Yeah, the question is if white wants to take.
Yeah, maybe we can play knight e3 immediately.
Yeah, it feels like you create an object to attack, yeah?
Yeah.
Knight e3 and then
b5.
b5 pawn
is not the best, obviously. So
far we don't see the reason. Why not?
d5 looks more or less natural, and I mean, why not?
So Alex is thinking. He has spent already a couple.
Not in every position
here.
white give black an opportunity to play d6, d5 in this opening, and not creating, I mean, some objects for it, to attack.
Comfortably. So I'm trying to recall, because I think there was a game of Jan Nepomniachtchi against Shahryar Mamediyarov, possibly not the same position, but something very similar was happening, that black went d5 and Jan took, and then knight e3, Shahryar exchanged the bishop. But no, probably it's not this position we're talking about, it's something else. Yeah, because here really it's not clear what bad can happen. Yeah, takes, rook d8. Then whatever you like. You can go after rook a d1. You can. I thought knight e7 to g6 might be an idea. It's like not clear how white is planning to improve his position, because d4 is.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about b4, b5.
b5 immediately, and if.
But I think black can even escape. I mean, queen can escape after like c4, just queen b4, and then like e7 or f8.
Yeah, so white can take the pawn back, or maybe queen d6, then to take rook d3, can rook b7, queen takes d3.
It's just nothing, probably.
Black is absolutely fine.
And Grishuk is still thinking.
So perhaps this d5 is not as easy as it seems to us. Maybe there is some unpleasant move. Not that I can see.
Well, also knight e7, but
yeah, I think for some reason I had seen rook on e6 and knight on e7 in those games. Maybe it's one of the moves, knight to e7, knight to g6. Not clear what like a real drawback would be, but yeah, it's still the game. With interestingly 14 moves made and only a pair of bishops is exchanged.
So I think the point that after knight e7, white may play d3, d4. I mean, you just gave me an opportunity to fight for the center.
Takes.
You mean like
takes d5?
Yeah, and takes d5. Yeah, but knight e5.
Knight e5s are there.
Yeah, so it still remains unclear.
Okay.
So Grishuk decided to play d5.
Decided to play d5. Finally, pawn takes, queen takes. Yeah, obviously you have to keep the e5 pawn protected. Now the question to Jan: what exactly was meant after d5? And you know what? I'm thinking knight e3. Okay, we said if black captures, he's fine, but he might not be forced to. He might still go queen d7. Because b5 is critical in this case. But if I'm not taking on b5 but playing knight e7 immediately, then you return to c4 and e5 pawn is hanging. Yeah, so 3 attacks on e5 pawn. Yeah, this might be problematic. This might be problematic because black seems to be not in time to defend.
Yeah, so knight e3 is played.
Knight e3 is played, and
I think bishop e3. I mean, knowing the flow of the match in all tournaments where players they really try to play in a solid way, I think bishop e3 is most likely to be played.
Yeah, and we can say as well, kind of a simplistic way, so that why would you invent something if bishop takes e3?
Yeah, if there is
seems to be good enough.
No necessity in it.
Yeah, seems to be good enough. Well, no time issues so far for Alexander. 16 minutes, that's twice as much time as he had in the previous game after same 15 moves or something. Even though in a previous game we can say that his position was totally under control, like with two bishops, you cannot really get a worse position. Here it's still tense. It's not so clear. So bishop takes, rook a d8, perhaps rook a d1, right? Since we figured out that b5 doesn't seem to lead to anything. Right, and the question is what move white is playing here. Sorry, black. Obviously, black's the move. So, do we play b5 or not?
Personally, I do not understand these pawn structures as good as players do, but I mean, the only drawback of b5 move that we're allowing some c5
c5 clear. But I was thinking of it, and I don't really see the way for white to bring the knight over here, because you are not afraid all that much of bishop c5 with black, right? But if the knight lands there, this becomes annoying.
Maybe the problem that some c4 tricks may be possible.
Okay.
Well, I didn't calculate it properly, but that's my first intention.
If black takes c4, white takes c4 with the pawn,
I mean, it should be just much better.
This feels like a better endgame. You have to say queen e4, or maybe it's not an endgame. Maybe you move the queen actually. You probably trade on d8.
Okay, well, at least I can take all pieces and then play b5, which would be in favor of white, obviously.
Yeah, this is better for white. So not that simple, and Krzysztof is reluctant to take on e3. So something in this position that he doesn't like. What else can you do? Yeah, queen d7 we didn't like for b5 reason. Yeah. And then e5 is hanging. And 14 minutes left, and I was praising Grishuk for playing faster than in previous game, but once again the situation is not perfectly comfortable. And he does play queen d7. What does that mean? Ah, wait a sec. I'm being stupid. After b5, black might... yeah, white might want to take. Yeah, black takes, white takes. What happens there? Then this A file is really strange.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a very annoying pin, but at the same time, knight e7, you cannot go knight c4 because of a check.
But I can simply play bishop somewhere.
Ah, alright. Then we go knight e7 first. And in case of knight c4, okay. Let's do it this way.
Yes,
knight goes to e7, and then in case of knight c4, a b5, because first I thought, okay, white takes with on e5 with the tempo, game's over. But game is not over. Knight takes on e5, like queen goes to e8, let's say,
d5.
or d5. For some reason I thought e8 to have knight g6 and some pin, but d5 also seems to be very nice. And after a b5, you do have this shot, bishop takes f2, followed by a capture on a1.
Yes, but you know that the players are trying to reach, I mean, to agree and draw. I can't see.
Well, like I'm not sure if like trying to agree a draw, but Jan went back with his knight to c4, and Grishuk apparently doesn't have a choice. So what's the position? Yeah, queen d7, and then knight to c4 was played.
It was a silent proposal.
Yeah, and then b5 of course is a threat, so you cannot really play rook e8. Then b5, the pawn on e5 is gone. Queen back to d5, and Jan is thinking again. And here we couldn't really see the other move.
How to improve?
Because e4 is a threat, right? e4 is a threat. Rook a d1. Well, rook d8. The other rook is on e6. Yeah. So rook d8 is, well, not perhaps a serious threat, but very comfortable move for black if he's allowed to do it. Yeah, and some, some tactic, like if bishop goes to e3, I was thinking e4, white tries to be clever, takes, seemingly traps the queen, but there is knight takes b4 you cannot take. Well, nobody is interested to enter this. So knight e3 back, queen d7 back. Second time this position. If Jan decides to go knight c4, Krishuk can claim a draw with queen d5. Jan cannot, yet cannot claim a draw, right? Because there was a pawn on d6. So,
seemingly a very few ways to improve, but
yeah, it's like b5
even no one
principle.
Yep. Okay, we can try.
Yeah. b5, knight e7, and for instance, we are not going knight c4, but playing some modest move like rook b1.
So, but then I can control the A file.
Ah, so you capture, A takes, yes. You can go knight g6 as well. It's not clear why it is. Why it is better for white in this case. It's simply not.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think it's very likely that second game will finish even faster than the first one and will proceed to shorter time controls. What I can say that at some point they will be pushed to play for a win, because if this will be another draw and 2 draws 10 plus 10 and 2 draws 5 plus 3, then this tricky Armageddon game will come into play, where white gets 1 minute more but black gets the draws. White is forced to play for a win, otherwise he's eliminated. So this way or another, this match will be decided today. Okay, so Jan actually has spotted some idea. That's the feeling. That's the feeling, right? After what is that? Knight
e3, queen d7.
Queen d7. Yeah, that's the position. Already repeated a couple of times. Because otherwise, you do not spend that much time.
Or at least he's trying to spot this kind of idea. I mean, positionally, only white is a side who can be worse, because d3 pawn is weak.
Kind of d3 pawn is
and black has a clear plan to just double or add the rook on d6 moreover.
Yeah, so you really have to care about d3 pawn. That's correct. So it's either b5 here or knight back to c4, which is the repetition. We don't really see a third move.
Maybe bishop b2 all of a sudden.
Bishop b2 and after rook d8 to go to d1. This could be...
Or b5 now first.
b5... Ah yeah, now that black cannot take on b5, yeah. Knight e7 and then to play rook d1, yeah. Or knight c4.
Or knight c4.
Yeah, here knight c4 is... I'm not sure how dangerous it is, but might be something. So if black takes d3, perhaps still not much. Yeah, perhaps still not much.
I guess we can go. No,
b5
is played.
And rook goes back. And knight a5, the move that we did not expect from Alexander Krishuk. So queen d7, b5, knight goes to a5, and he played it pretty quickly.
So probably knight e7 is just illegal for some reason.
Or he knows that knight a5 is good. That's another possibility.
Or maybe just logical because you're taking c4.
Yeah, so knight is not coming back to c4. On the other hand, the knight on a5 is not the piece you're dreaming about. And I'm actually thinking that white might consider going c4 in this position, as ugly as it looks. Just to, support the b5 pawn. The knight on a5 is out of play for the time being. And then bishop d2. Of course, if he has the time to do it. So we have the game. We've already almost said that it is a draw, and let's move to short time controls. No. Jan still feels like the position has something to offer. Okay, so, and c4. Yeah, c4 on the board. So now Alexander has to show what was the idea behind
maybe e4. It looks a bit awkward, but
yeah, e4. I suspect white takes. Black has to take with the knight, right?
Looks like. Otherwise, bishop d2 maybe, and still no idea how to protect the knight on the a5.
Well, actually, here I don't see a comfortable move for white.
Yeah, maybe now black's idea is to double on e-file.
Yeah. With the rook or possibly the queen as well, because queen on d7 is not very comfortable. Yes, so we leave the d-file for the queenside rook.
Yeah, for example, if rook d1 we are doubling with
rook d1 we go queen e8, already threatening knight f2 it seems. Already threatening knight f2.
Queen e8, right.
Yeah, it's like I didn't want to go to e7
because of
some 95s, yeah. So
even there.
Yeah. So e4 is the move that Khrushchev can play, and honestly, I like the resulting position.
For black, you mean?
For black, yeah. So once again, e4 takes, knight takes. It could be that some knight g4 is possible, or I know there is still knight. No. Thought knight takes f2.
There might be some tactics.
Yeah, that definitely is some tactic. It's just that we are unable to spot it.
Yeah, maybe after knight g4 I can simply play rook a8.
Yeah, if you don't want to say.
I mean, creating a threat of taking on f2.
Now knight f2 becomes a threat. Yeah. Yeah, it's not clear how to use the fact that the knight is on a5. Yeah, because. Yeah, it feels like it might be hanging in some positions.
And in some positions it may disturb with knight b3 or...
Yeah, there is a feeling like knight b3, you know, deflecting the queen from c2
so
and then something...
It does look so unaesthetical, and there is still some harmony in black's pieces.
Black setup, yeah. Yeah, well, the feeling is like after e4, if there is no immediate refutation, this will lead to the position where all three results are possible.
Yeah, but g takes e4 is... probably
d4
the
is
only
forced,
one.
right?
Yeah.
d4 is forced. Knight takes e4, and then I feel like there might be a strong move for white, but I don't see it. Like to go knight d2, hoping that black is going to take, but black can just move the knight. Yeah?
I feel that knight f2 is just...
Yeah, you just take on
f2.
Just...
Okay, well, I can't say that it's winning, but...
King
most
takes,
likely.
and then you go queen d4, rook a3.
Okay, but still, I mean, like...
Yeah, the feeling is like this should
white
work.
is totally pinned. I was also considering f7, f5, by the way.
Other rook to e8.
Yeah, we can add rook a3. Yeah, adding a pressure. And then maybe f5.
Yeah. 5. Bishop to
d4.
Played by Alexander Khrushchev. Oh wow.
It's a bit surprising, but...
Point being that this bishop cannot be taken. If we go to the... We go to the actual position, the bishop cannot be...
So it was just overlooked by us, and
so
probably by Jan
takes,
as well.
Pawn takes, and the knight from e3 can't move. It's like white is not losing immediately, he has bishop d2, but the resulting position should be no problem for black. That's like bishop d2
take on
to protect the rook to attack the knight. Yeah, black takes on e3, white takes over here. Then
just take on f2.
Probably take on f2. Yeah, if white is forced to take with the king, so be it.
Yeah.
So bishop d4. Black apparently wants white to clarify where the rook is going.
Well, rook b1.
Rook b1, yeah. That's what...
The only thing that I don't like in bishop d4 that At some point
it will be taken.
Yeah, it will be taken. And e4, I can't say it's no more possible, but as a fact that knight takes d4 is possible for white.
Yes,
I wouldn't say that.
Idea e4 is no longer in the position. Yeah, the feeling is such that.
Okay, bishop d4 is an artful move, but
a takes b5 now. Okay, so
probably a takes.
Very likely. You can make some argument for c takes so that the knight is getting to c4,
yes, but
really. Like the pawn structure you probably don't like all that much.
Yeah, like b6, knight b7, knight c5 is just so it's risky for white.
So perhaps a takes, yeah, to keep the integrity of your pawn chain.
Yes, but the question is how to get the knight back to the game from a5.
b6 perhaps, and just go knight b7, go knight c5.
That's an idea, obviously. Well, like b6.
b6, yeah. I mean, at some point, white will have to connect the rooks. So I'm wondering, for instance, of this position. If you,
yeah, by the way, knight f5.
Knight f5.
I mean, I'm kind of forcing you to play bishop c5, but then e5 pawn is hanging.
Then you're gonna take.
I mean, probably with knight.
All right, a b5 played. Yes. Yeah, once again, I wasn't certain, even in our line after knight f5, I wasn't certain if black cannot leave the bishop on d4, just go knight b7.
Yes, but I saw that d4 may be hanging up to bishop b2 there.
Ah, bishop b2 immediately, yeah. Then you do have difficulties defending d4. Yeah, and we were speaking about the knight on a5, which was useless, but in fact, in this position, if it happens that white takes and d4 is weak, then knight on f6 is not doing much, because it cannot really protect the weak pawn. Does it mean that Grishuk is getting slightly outplayed, or we don't? Well, perhaps we don't see all the possible resources for black. But now, keeping the bishop on the board, well, actually is an option. You can go bishop c5 right now.
By the way, I was thinking about c5.
c5, yes, but then, and then if white takes with en passant on c6, then you take with the knight. Otherwise, you are trying to say that yes, we'll take with e pawn or c pawn, depends on how does that unfold. Yeah, definitely, if you're allowed to play c5 and support the bishop on d4, this should be.
So it remains solid, but probably Grishuk could pretend for more than this position.
Yeah, we still feel like e4 was very interesting at the very least. Almost 9 minutes for Alexander, but yeah, very complex position where you would really prefer to have a lot of time to navigate all those structures. I mean, do you play c5, do you go b6, knight b7? Do you try to keep the bishop with bishop c5, which is once again another option to go back to c5, and then possibly...
Yes, but now there is no sense
in bishop d4, it's like you've spent... Well, you sort of spent one tempo.
Confirming that bishop d4 was some kind of mistake.
Yeah, but you've spent one tempo and...
The rook is no more on a file.
Rook is on b1 instead of a1, which is not necessarily in white's favor. So it is considerable, I would say, bishop c5 and then e4 if white allows it. The question is that, yeah, if you go bishop c5, the knight still remains on a5. So you kind of want this knight back in play as soon as possible. But all of a sudden, very, very tricky position, very tricky pawn structure we are getting.
Yeah, I'm very curious about Grishuk's next move. It may be c5 or... By the way, I was thinking about playing rook e8 or d8, but then like bishop d2.
Bishop d2, and then
yeah, forcing to
playing
disrupt
b6
the pawn structure.
Playing b6 is not something you like all that much.
Yeah, and taking with the pawn, obviously.
So c5 might be an idea, yeah. Or if he doesn't want to allow knight f5, can he actually play the other rook to e8? So that, once again, I'm not very happy with this move, but sort of try to make...
probably the position is not, I mean...
not terribly bad,
not
it's playable.
I mean, even not bad at all.
It should be playable, right? Bishop d2, and then let's say we go b6, and hoping to bring this knight via b7 to c5.
Like rook
e8. Okay. So he does play it. Yeah, because now, even if white protects the e1 rook, knight d4, e takes d4 is very awkward for white because there is no jump with this knight. It's like you have to go to f1. So perhaps a decent prophylactical move.
So probably the position still remains in the affordable levels.
So
affordable limits.
Sort of dynamically equal, as they say, right? So, which basically means for most of the fans and for the commentators,
we have no idea.
We have no idea what's going on the board, right? So, well, we try to provide, you know, like short variations that it's possible to miss this, it's possible to miss that, but players, of course, they are much deeper in the position, and they see a lot of fine details. So once again, now Jan needs to prepare the way to take on d4, right? Because this bishop on d4 is annoying.
Well, bishop
d2 is fine. b6, I suspect. Still, this knight needs to be relocated to some better squares. And then, using the fact that the knight is still on a5, can I play... that doesn't help me. I thought playing bishop c3, trying to say if you take, then your e5 pawn is weak and the knight is still on e5. But you don't take, you just go knight b7. You just go knight b7. Doesn't matter what I'm taking with. I still have no squares for this knight on e3. Silly horse. And yeah, and if obviously if white spends one more move like going queen b2, then black should be able to take already, and the knight is ready to go back to c5.
Like leading to some simplifications.
Takes,
obviously e4 is a move there, but even
knight c5 is
possible,
is fine, it seems. Yeah, takes, rook takes in this case knight d3, and the resulting position looks fairly equal. Yeah. The resulting position looks fairly equal.
Rook e8, then c5 is played.
c5 is played. Okay.
Leading to unbalanced position.
So if b6, then c6 apparently. So he's trying to keep this knight on a5 offside for as long as possible. But you get some squares, you give some squares. Now knight d5 becomes an idea in some positions, as well as well, e4 is not so much. Yeah, the knight on a5 is still there. That's a certain problem with this knight on the edge of the board for Alexander Grishuk.
And knight d5 looks very natural. Well, knight c3 becomes a threat.
Ah, yeah. So there is some point. Yeah,
so probably white may still have to play bishop d2.
But then he sort of threatens to, you know, take d4, take d5, and then the knight on a5 is hanging. And if you're forced to go b6, c6, move the queen, then white should be better.
Yeah.
Looks critical. I'll go further and say that this looks critical for Alexander Grishuk, because really the knight is getting stuck on a5. The knight that we originally were not putting to a5. We thought knight e7 was safer option. So
suddenly it became a target.
Yeah. And now it was seen that Grishuk is nervous. Yeah. By the way, the way he almost touched the knight on f6. Yeah, knight d5. You need to do it. Knight f5.
Maybe
d5.
After bishop d2 there is something else. For example, yes, I've been thinking about knight f4.
Knight f4.
Just leaving it complicated.
And then if knight takes on d4, you take with the queen, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, Jan simply captures on d5. And then on d4. Simplifies everything. Tries to say your knight is not escaping from a5. So then the next move is bishop d2, and it's not even clear what you take with.
Yes, playing queen d4, we're giving some extra tempos.
Yeah, bishop b2 at
like
least,
or
d2
rook e4 or bishop d2.
e4. Yeah, many attractive moves for
but usually,
white.
I mean, you want to take with a piece, not with
the
pawn.
piece, yeah, so that the backward d3 pawn is actually vulnerable.
Yeah, but maybe even taking on d4 with pawn is not as bad as.
Okay, but then white takes on e8.
Rook takes.
Goes bishop d2.
Well, I mean.
Now the real question is how bad is the situation after b6?
Yeah, but the point that maybe I can try some weird rook a2 stuff.
Queen d1.
I was thinking about this.
Queen a2.
Yeah, but you know, like that still position remains. No, but they take on b5 in the end, and it leads to an equal.
I mean, at the very least, you have knight b3 as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, after king h2, obviously, queen takes b5. You protect the e8 square. Takes, and some perpetual has to be.
Yeah. So
has to be achieved this way or another. Check.
And take on d4.
g6 takes on d4. All right. So.
But personally.
But the feeling was
I did like king f1 there.
You have to agree that it's very narrow. The path becomes very narrow for black.
Yeah, obviously.
So what happened in reality? Rook e8, and not bishop d2, but bishop f4 was played, attacking the c7
Which is
pawn.
very logical. But also I didn't see the refutation after bishop d2, rook e2, king f1. Bishop f4 is...
Bishop f4 looks like a clever thing to do.
Just simply rook
e7, okay. Now...
Or maybe it's just...
Wait, something...
It's not so clear how to attack the knight. So we can surround it, but there is no direct way how to...
Queen a4 is one of the ways to attack the knight, but then this allows b6, yeah?
Or some queen f5 stuff, I don't know.
Queen a4 played. So now, b6, I was thinking bishop c7, but black can take on c5 with the queen, yeah?
Yeah.
Queen a4 played. Not that black has any other moves, yeah, it seems that b6 he needs to play.
Yeah, if queen f5 there is simply queen d4, I think so.
I don't see why.
I mean, like opening the position for... Knight is really misplaced.
Yeah, so queen f5, queen d4 is just a pawn up, it seems. Yeah, because rook d7 doesn't win this pawn back, I believe. Queen e4 in this case. Queen e4. Okay, so b6 played and c6 played. So the knight is arrested on a5. The c7 pawn is nailed to the ground, cannot move, needs constant protection. Queen b4 is a threat. It's a bad position for, it's simply a bad position for black. So
Black needs some, I can't say extraordinary, but at least something active.
To do something, and it's not clear what.
Okay, well, can I try some
g5?
Bishop d2?
I wasn't even certain that you need to go to d2, because keeping it on g3 could have been fine.
I want to
bishop
take
d2 is bishop d2 is quite strong, because you're simply threatening to capture on a5 twice.
Yeah, and it seems to me that knight a5 was kind of a mistake in the opening.
What to do right now? Grishuk is down to 220 something. It's really hard to find a move, and g5 might turn to be just a loss of a tempo, because seems like bishop is heading towards d2 anyway. Yeah, the knight is the problem. You can't really move it. Queen f5 now simply allows queen d4, no compensation whatsoever. It's simply a very bad position. So one more time, how did he get there? Knight a5, but then we didn't like his bishop d4 as well, right?
Yeah.
That was the next point where...
there were just two...
Once again, we are not certain, but we felt like e4 was... possibly was a better move. Yeah, knight a5, let's agree. Let's believe
first knight e7, but well, like after knight e5, c4, I think we consider e4.
e4 as an interesting try at least. Okay, so in a game, king h7 was played. Sort of preparing for an endgame, as far as I understand. So bishop d2, he will sack a pawn, and then, I don't know, come up with some sort of counterplay, and then in one moment there won't be a check on the back range. This is how I can, you know.
By the way, rook e2 immediately.
Bishop takes, and you go rook a2. Ah, okay, that's clever. That actually is clever, but perhaps not. Well, king h7 is super clever, because the line goes on. Queen c4.
Yes, we have to take.
Takes.
And you mean in the
end?
Rook
a5, c5, takes, b6, takes, c7, rook a8, and rook takes b6, and now with king on g8 it would have been winning, because rook b8 is a threat. But now black simply plays rook c8.
So Grishuk just...
That's like a really long calculated line. Well, the problem with this line I'm having, in fact, is that white is by no means forced to enter this line. It's like bishop d2 perhaps doesn't really win on a spot, but he's not forced to do.
But how to improve? Okay, well, maybe queen b4 is also
considerable. Queen b4 attacking the rook,
and it's not that easy to... I mean...
might be not possible to protect.
Yeah, because...
unless you are ready to go queen c5. I mean, that's another question, because you will be balancing. No, you won't be balancing anyway. Queen c5, you just take and go bishop d2. The knight is trapped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought like the knight is hanging in the air, but rook a1, we have knight b3, so it's kind of black survives. Black doesn't survive this. Bishop d2, knight is trapped.
So queen b4 should be looks strong.
Queen a2 in this case.
Well, I think I can leave all the threats simply playing something like rook f1 or rook c1.
F1, yeah, so that the rook is still hanging and rook cannot leave because c7 is hanging.
Maybe rook c1 and rook f1, both.
Obviously, Jan feels that his position has a lot to offer, so he has to be. He wants to be really precise in this one. Can we check this forcing line once again? Bishop d2. Rook e2, rook e2, bishop takes a5. We said rook a2, which looks like the only move, yeah? Queen c4.
I mean, like we can simply take the pawn.
Takes, and after rook a5, yeah, actually this should be winning.
Yeah.
This should be
winning.
Well. Rook d1, then to take on d4, and those pawns, very far advanced pawns there.
But he played something
Jan
else.
Found something else. Rook to b4, attacking not the knight but the d4 pawn. Rook to b4. So he wants to capture on d4, and why not? So queen f5 once again. He has rook takes, and that's really tough position.
Maybe queen e6?
Queen e6, threatening a check from e1, right? Well, perhaps that's what he has to do. Less than a minute for Alexander Grishuk, who played a fantastic tournament, but now finds himself in a very tough spot. And we have to agree that during the whole match against Jan, it felt that well, if any player was putting pressure, it was Jan Nepomniachtchi, not Alexander Krysiuk. So, still, there are chances to fight, but the position looks really, really tough.
The problem that even after Queen D1, I mean,
the position remains terrible because you cannot trade the queens. Yeah. Then you lose the endgame because the C7 pawn
everything is hanging. Everything is on the maybe the worst spots on the board.
Nice luck. So let's see what Jan comes up with.
Oh yeah, like Queen F6 is probably...
Rook takes D4, I just thought of it. Rook takes D4 and then F5 was played pretty quickly. Rook takes D4 because check, King H2. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, originally we thought it's got to be check, yeah? King H2, take and perhaps Rook E4, what Krysiuk didn't like. It's like I'm trying to justify his last move. He plays F5 controlling E4 square because Rook E4.
So black is forced to take on E4, then we take with queen with check.
With queen with check, yeah.
Yeah, so
I mean, technically you can play queen C5, but that's once again that's just
bad,
lost.
Yeah. Okay, well, queen E6, Rook D4, and F5.
F5, yeah. So pawn up for Nepomniachtchi,
bishop is
should be absolutely winning position. Bishop E3, cutting all the possible counterplays.
Probably
G5,
one of the last chances to create something. I mean, just to darken the water.
Yeah, okay. He wants to play F4. That's clear. But I mean, one thing to do is just to play G3. After which should be completely winning for white.
Also, by the way, I think we can prevent F4 playing Queen B4.
Queen B4, so that F4 Rook goes to E4.
Or
you can take as well. Yeah, that's a nice line.
Okay, well,
takes,
you can take. Black is forced to take and play
Black
Knight B7.
captures, goes Knight B7,
but it's still.
And this is completely winning, of course. Yeah. Goes to E5 and then takes on C7. Even though it feels a bit wrong that you're letting this knight escape. You had Rook E4 as well, which was winning on a spot.
Multi-purpose. Multi-purposal move.
I don't see Krysiuk coming back in this one, to be honest. Yeah, Queen B4. His strat actually works in case of Knight B3, right?
Yeah.
Queen B4 played. Bravo, you found the strongest move in the position. No, there is simply no way back for Alexander.
Yeah, well, like Rook F7, but then Rook D8 probably. Because also E1 square is captured. Or Rook G7.
Rook G7. But then, yeah, even happier, you're going Rook D8.
So the only task for Jan is not to blunder anyone.
Not to blunder heavily.
Yeah.
Now at least the knight is coming back to the game.
But still, like, you play Knight B3, but what to do next? Not many good squares, unfortunately for Krysiuk. Yeah, Rook F8, I mean... Just, if you can, why not to do it? Rook D8.
Rook D8.
Yeah.
Knight B3. And then one of the ways to finish Krysiuk off would be to go Queen C4. Yeah, in a cynical manner, but just this endgame should not be possible to save. And it's not a single piece is moving for black after Queen C4, and pawn takes. Less than a minute for Alexander Krysiuk. 4 minutes left for Jan Nepomniachtchi, who is about to become the winner of Moscow Grand Prix, it seems. And it's interesting with Jan because he was, from the very early years, he was considered to be like prominent talent, but he rarely wins major tournaments. Like he shows decent results, he plays well for a national team, but he well, I don't recall all that many tournaments that he won. He has won
last year he won
Memorial in Moscow a couple of years ago. Dortmund, yes, and perhaps
so bishop
it could have been a couple of more.
Instead of queen c4, which what looks a bit...
Bishop d4, but perhaps it's well calculated, so that if you take, he takes with the queen and threatens rook d7.
Yeah, so
and apparently
still no checks.
Apparently there is no defense after rook d7.
So on if rook f7.
Here, not taking the bishop. Well, 10 seconds left for Krzysztof. And in such position, I mean, there is... Okay, rook e7 played. But this allows queen takes e7, rook d7, and Jan wins the tournament. Yes, and queen e7 played.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the end. So in a brilliant manner, sacrificing the queen, obviously temporarily, because if queen takes, rook d7 takes the queen back, and white actually ends up being queen up after the d-pawn promotes. So, dramatic but not such a long tiebreak, and yeah, congrats to Jan Nepomniachtchi on winning the event in Moscow. He is leading the Grand Prix series after that, obviously. Krzysztof, however, is not that far behind.
Yeah.
So, because, well, if we speak a bit about the Grand Prix points, the winner gets 8, and the finalist gets 5. Plus, Krzysztof has won 2 matches in classical time control versus Nakamura and in round 1 against Karyakin. So this gives him 2 bonus Grand Prix points. So he's on total 7, while Jan won only 1 match against Aronian without a tiebreak. So Jan is on 9. So 2 points difference. Not dramatic just yet. So obviously after first leg of Grand Prix, we can say that the finalists immediately become huge favorites to qualify. But of course, there will be 2 more events for those players. Yeah, to remind you, the whole series consists of 4 tournaments, and I did my homework. I do know the cities. Yeah, the cities that they be held in. So it will be Riga in July. Then it will be Hamburg and Tel Aviv
in December, probably.
Okay. So, players who did play in Moscow will have 2 more tournaments. So for those who had, not the most successful, they will still have a chance to improve their result. The feeling is that you need to score some points in all 3 tournaments, and in 2 of them you really have to score a lot, at least the final. So, well, the field is evenly matched and everything, but the concurrence is so high, so that you really have to show good results in all 3 tournaments. Once again, congratulations to Jan Nepomniachtchi. I believe we are getting ready for an interview with the winner. And what can we say? It was a great pleasure working for you guys. Thanks for following us, and we appreciate your comments. We'll try to improve what can be improved, and pardon us for something that we can't really influence. So I think that will be it for today. Once again, a short but dramatic tiebreak, and very nice game played by Jan Nepomniachtchi. He got totally outplayed. Alexander Krzysztof obviously got totally outplayed, and Jan outplayed him. I'm waiting for the confirmation on an interview.
A very stylish ending of the game.
Yeah, the championship move. Yeah, the final move. It's always nice when you sacrifice the queen, and it's the last move in the game and in the tournament.
It remains remarkable.
Yeah. So, and the game itself was really nice, and well, I feel a bit pity for Alexander Krzysztof, who really had a good tournament.
A very strong tournament.
Yeah,
very good performance, but still not enough to be the winner.
It turned out it was not enough, and Jan was dominant on all the tiebreaks he played.
Yeah.
Right, and I believe we are ready, and I think that's time we are signing off. So once again, thanks for watching, and we are ready for an interview with the finalists, an interview with the winners.
Between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Alexander Grishuk is over. Jan outplayed his opponent after the second rapid game. So Jan, please share your impressions on this match.
Well, it was very tough. I mean, overall, the whole tournament, and especially the final, of course. And well, the classical part wasn't very exciting, and I believe the play was rather equal. Yes, so I was slightly better prepared in the opening, but I mean, was nothing, really important, and nothing which could, decide the game in some way. And in rapid part, I surprised with Petrov defense. Yes, so. I thought maybe it's a correct place. Once Grand Prix is held in Russia and two Russian players are playing, so Petrov defense is the optimal choice. So and somehow Alexander played d3, and it quickly went. I quickly went out of any theory. Somehow I managed to equalize, and in the second game, it was some piano, and. Play was very calm, but in some way, I think I played a lot of games in this line a few years ago and was more or less successful. And in general, White's play is more simple and complex. And I believe after d5, and especially after b5, knight e5, Black could be in some trouble because knight on a5 is out of play. And in the game, I somehow managed to, almost catch this knight and provoke for b6, c6. And after this, I think structure is already more or less winning for White.
Yes, thank you, Jan. And Alexander, what do you think went wrong in this second game of rapid?
No, the whole match was going wrong. I was the only game I was better is when I played the d3 on third move. The only game when I was slightly pressing. And in the last game, I don't know, maybe d5 is already slightly wrong. Then maybe queen d7, but I mean I quickly got just completely hopeless position with this knight. I was trying, it was very stupid. I was trying to avoid slightly worse positions, and I allowed just completely a winning position for White.
Thank you. And how do you estimate your play in this event? To both players, my question goes.
I'm not going to, to be pessimistic. So. Well, somehow I managed to win, and in my opinion, the whole system is. I mean, it makes some harm to the quality of play because you want sometimes to take a less risky decision. Yes, you do not take any extra risk and play safely, and somehow you are missing the best continuations, which are connected with some serious play, and especially tiebreak. I mean, it's very tough. So, but I mean, of course, overall, I'm very happy with my result.
And you, Alexander?
No, I actually think for me it's the opposite. I think knockout is best for me. I usually play best knockout, and I think anyway it was my probably best tournament in terms of quality in the very long period. And if I won today, of course I would be happy, but you cannot be happy when you lose. So,
yes, sure. And which match do you think is the best one here?
No, I think my game against Nakamura, which I won, I think it's my best game since my victory over Rothstein, I don't know, 5 years ago. Now I have really 3 games to be proud of. This against Vugar Gashimov, where my king ran to b1 with black, this against Rothstein, and now against Nakamura. So, and even today, I don't know, it's okay, of course I didn't play well, but not completely terribly either. I mean, the last game it was like the chain of, slight problem here, and then it goes on. It was not like, just single mistakes again and again.
Yes, and Jan, what about you? Which match do you like more here?
Well, I think I played more or less okay, but I mean I didn't play any spectacular games, so I was very lucky in some tie breaks and in some tie breaks game, especially against Wojtaszek. And well, in classical part I was trying to be solid, and well, that's only the only word you can you can say about my play in this tournament. So I was trying to be solid. So I think it was somewhat solid.
Yes. Thank you very much. And where are you going to play next?
I think there is some Armageddon series from World Chess very soon here in Moscow, and then in Croatia, in Zagreb. It's a Grand Chess Tour event.
And you, Alexander?
I'm going to play Stavanger now. It starts actually in 5 days, and there is an interesting system that if you make a draw in a classical game, you play Armageddon immediately. So I also hope to play some Armageddons. I hope not to lose all the games without Armageddon.
Thank you very much, and I wish you good luck in your next events.
Thank you.
Thank you.